Hi, everybody. So today I'm going to discuss the absurdity of claiming that we are not forced to exist. And I've had several debates recently, and we've been gaslit on both fronts. We're told that we did not have life imposed on us in the first place, right? They'll talk about these soul contracts and how our souls basically asked our parents to create us. We asked for all of this. Our suffering is our fault. And then now we're being gaslit to say that once we exist, that is also our fault. So we chose to exist and we chose to continue existing. Now, let me just start out by talking about anti-natalism. As you know, my book is probably more pro-mortalist. I still consider myself an anti-natalist, but because of the non-entity problem, I think it's more important to focus on elective promotalism because once life has been imposed on them, on any of us, then that is an injustice that should be remedied. If we don't want to exist, we should not be forced to continue existing. We can talk about the non-entity problem, right? Because many people have claimed that they have debunked anti-natalism because of the non-entity problem that you can't you can't be harmed until you exist. So because you were a non-entity, the imposition of life is not really a harm, right? And that is debatable. I still think you're harmed because you're forced to exist. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But I think it is a separate issue that once you are a competent adult and you're saying that you don't want to exist, you're denied the right to medical assistance. That is a separate harm. That is an act of force. And the force, which I address in my book, is that if anyone assists you in obtaining a humane, um, voluntary, I'm trying not to use verbiage that will get my live stream taken down. But if you don't, they want you to be relegated to the most traumatic, violent methods possible, right? And then they say that this is your choice because you could choose the alternative, right? You could choose the most gruesome, gory as it possible, and if you reject that, then that means that you choose to exist, even though the original imposition was not a choice, right? We can debate whether someone is harmed being brought into existence, but regardless of whether they were harmed, it still isn't a choice. None of this was consensual. So the fact that you are forced to continue existing is demonstrable, um, and you're not free to no longer exist. Your parents brought you into hell, and now you are trapped by any objective interpretation, any objective definition. I'm going to go with the legal definition. This is Black law's definition of force. Force is defined as power, violence, compulsion, or constraint exercised upon or against a person or thing, constraining power, compulsion, strength directed to an end. The law also recognizes duress, a specific form of force, as operating when a person acts under threat of harm when no reasonable alternative is available to them. Force and fear renders any arrangement voidable, provided the force or fear was such that it would actually influence the party. Crucially, courts do not ask whether any alternative exists in the abstract. They ask whether the available alternative is one that a reasonable person could actually be expected to choose. Now let me define battery. Battery is the unlawful application of physical force to another person without their consent. Um, I'm gonna cop to the fact that the definition says unlawful, but I'm an anarchist, so just the fact that something is lawful does not make it legitimate. The bottom line is that you didn't consent. So even though the violence is technically lawful, it still is illegitimate. So I'm not using battery like in a technical legal context. I'm using the fact that it is an involuntary act of force. So technically, it's not a battery because it is lawful, but it still is illegitimate. Assault is the condition of living under the credible threat of harm, placing a person in a reasonable apprehension of harmful contact. The reasonable person standard applies. Would a reasonable person in this situation apprehend harm? Now, I'm going to apply these definitions. Consent in any context, the law recognizes it's not a one-time event. It is ongoing, renewable, and freely revocable. Every day you continue in any arrangement, the law recognizes that your continued participation reflects either genuine consent or the absence of a reasonable means of exit. The moment a reasonable means of exit is removed, continued participation is no longer voluntary, it is compelled. Now let's apply this to your involuntary existence. A person who does not wish to continue existing faces the following situation. The state has already criminalized their ability to obtain physician assistance so they can die in a humane manner. Medical assistance, peaceful, dignified, and it's like I have to use these terms because it's like everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm trying to use careful language, especially when I'm on YouTube, so I don't get in trouble for advocating for something that I'm not actually advocating for. I'm advocating for a legal right, not for anybody to go out and harm themselves. Now, so everybody knows what I'm talking about. If I'm obfuscating, it's not because I'm doing it intentionally. It is because I'm trying to not get my channel taken down. So you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about medical assistance. I'm talking about dying in a humane manner. The same medical precision that is given to a capital murderer, that is given to a cat or a dog, but it's denied to you as a law-abiding citizen. Right? So we're all on the same page. You know what I'm talking about. Because when I have these debates, they keep gaslighting me, and I have to spend so much time making all these disclaimers and then giving definitions and qualifying everything. It's so obnoxious. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. So, in the absence of the right to medical assistance, the only option available is a violent means, a violent traumatic method that is not reasonable. It fails the reasonable person standard, what a reasonable person would do in that circumstance, right? Everybody has a natural disposition to fear their own annihilation. Nobody really wants to die. Even a person who actually terminates his or her life does not actually want to die. They see death as the lesser of two evils. They see, because it's like, you didn't choose any of this, by the way. You didn't choose life or death. So they put you in this position where you have to either continue being miserable or die, and you don't want to do either one. Neither is the best option. The best option would have been for you to not be created in the first place, but that has been taken from you. Non-existence is no longer an option. Now you are forced to continue existing or die in some traumatic manner, which none of this is ideal. You shouldn't have been put in this position in the first place, right? It's cruel for you to be put in that position, and the gaslighting basically says these people can't put themselves in your shoes. They don't understand why you wouldn't just go do it like you're making a cup of coffee, like it's so fucking easy. It is not easy. People have failed. People have been stuck with debilitating injuries for the rest of their lives. They need medical assistance. They need the same medical assistance that is afforded to a cat or a dog or a capital murderer. Now, you didn't choose to fear your own annihilation. You did not. It is biologically installed to you, and every sentient being fears their own annihilation, right? Every it's reflective, right? Even if you, let's say, in a rare, I had a quote from David Hume that I posted on my wall earlier. I try to remember what that quote was. David Hume. let me look there because I do want to actually cite it. It was something about no man. I'm just going to paraphrase because I don't want to waste time. No man wastes his life. No man wastes a life that is worth preserving, or something to that effect. You guys can go on my wall to see the exact quote, but that's essentially what he was saying. Um, if you guys are interested, I can talk about David Hume because David Hume had a lot to say about this whole subject. But it is a form of coercion, regardless of what you say. You can say, "Oh, it's so easy. You can just go jump off a cliff." Nobody wants to go jump off a fucking cliff. Why don't you go fucking jump off a cliff if you think it's so fucking easy? Why are you gaslighting me and say, "Oh, well, if you don't jump off a cliff, then that means that you choose to exist"? Are you out your fucking mind? Compulsion does not require actual physical restraint. It is built into your biology, right? Um, Now, if we were to use their logic to any other situation, they would recognize the force. Because if someone were to rob you, right, at gunpoint, and they held a gun to your head and said, "Give me your money or I'm going to shoot you," according to their logic, that is not an act of force because you could have chosen to just take the bullet to your head. So if you gave them your money, then you did that freely because you actually had an alternative, right? You see the fucking gaslighting. You see how ridiculous this is. If you were great, and the alternative was to what, get your head smashed in or be knocked into a coma, and so you stop resisting. According to their logic, you chose to get great. That whole sexual act was consensual. This shit is your fault. It's absolutely ridiculous. And what it really shows is how callous they are. They don't have any empathy. They can't put themselves in your shoes. They don't give a fuck about the original imposition, all right? They claim they have debunked anti-Nazism because you can't harm someone who did not exist. But now they're claiming that once you have been forced to exist, now you chose to continue existing. This shit is all your fault. It's not society's fault for denying you the right to medical assistance. It's not your parents' fault for imposing life on you in the first place. It's your fucking fault. You chose all of this shit. You had a soul contract where you asked your parents to create you, right? And of course they're the ones who articulate what your soul wanted. You can't articulate, you can't say my soul did not consent to this. No, they know what your soul wanted more than you did, right? And now that you're here, they're going to gaslight you and say, no, you want to be here. The fact that you choose to eat, the fact that you choose to breathe, these are biological impulses, right? If you don't eat, you're going to starve, you're going to waste away and suffer a slow, painful death. So none of this is voluntary, right? Again, it's based on a reasonable person standard. No reasonable person wants to die of starvation, a slow, painful death. So when we look at the full timeline, there was no consent at any point of this entire debacle, or I'm not sure, this whole experience, this whole thing that is this whole existence, this involuntary existence. Now let's go through the timeline. At the point of conception, right? And I know they want to go prior to conception because they say your soul already consented to this. No proof of this whatsoever, assuming facts without evidence. So at the point of conception, you did not consent. They have no evidence that you consented. So the soul contract nonsense, we're just going to dismiss that because they can't prove it. And we don't have to negate something that hasn't been proven. There was no consent at the point of gestation. The person, if you want to call that a person, that person had no capacity to consent. They were in their mother's womb. They didn't choose to be in their mother's womb, right? Of course, they were receiving nutrients from the mother's body, but did they consent to receive those nutrients? Did they consent to be housed in her body, or were they imprisoned in her body, right? Because they'll talk about how you used to be so grateful because they gave you life. And I'm not trying to be sexist to just blame it on a woman. I know it takes two. But at the end of the day, they act like they did you a favor at birth. There was no consent to your birth. And this is the assault point. This is the battery, because some jurisdictions kind of merge battery and assault. My Texas does. But let me just use it in a typical common law context. Let's just call it a battery. This was physical force applied to your person without consent. As a baby, you were physically expelled from the womb, pushed, propelled, forced through the birth canal and into the world. And by the way, most of these babies are not happy. I don't. I've never seen a happy baby. I've never seen a baby come out the womb smiling. They're usually crying. They they look pissed. By all indications, these babies are not happy. They look pissed. They're like, "Why the fuck did you do this to me? I am pissed. I did not ask to be brought into this fucking world." So the child is pushed through the world through force, through violence, by the way. We're going to use the word that is actually accurate. You were violently pushed into the world, and we can say that when it comes to the actual birth. The birthing process is an act of violence. We can debate whether the act of procreation is an act of violence. I would say that it is. This is a battery. The application of physical force to a person's body without their consent, it does not require malice. It does not require an injury. It only thing it requires is the fact that it was involuntary. So now you have to breathe, right? This is a biological compulsion under threat of suffocation. You did not consent to breathing. You never consented to any of this shit. And this is all relevant because I'm going through the timeline, because now they're going to retroactively say that all of these biological impulses are your fault that you chose. No, your first breath was not consensual, and none of your breaths thereafter were consensual. Every meal that you took was under the compulsion of starvation. None of this was consensual. Every act of daily biological survival, responses to threat that are biologically ingrained into your psychology, into your nature, none of this was consensual. You did not choose to inhabit your body. That was imposed on you. So when you go through the timeline, right? You did not choose to live. Every day that you eat, every day that you breathe, these are all acts of impositions that come with the original imposition of forcing you to inhabit your body. Eating is not consenting to existence. Breathing is not consent. Getting out of bed, going to work, participating in thousands of acts that look like participation, they're not consensual. The threats of pain, starvation, deprivation, punishment by the state, suffering that was built into your biology and the social systems that you were born into, none of this is consensual. The social contract is bullshit. The social contract has no merit. I not only use it to be contextual, it's not that I actually believe in it. I don't believe that we actually consent to a social contract. The alternative is destitution, violence by the state, suffering. It still is not consensual. Again, this is based on a reasonable person standard. The aging of your body, the natural progression of deterioration of health, the decline, the accumulation of pain, the slow failure of your psychological faculties. This is all built into your biology. You never consented to any of this shit, right? So, in the absence of the right to medical assistance in dying, the person is forced to continue this deterioration. They're sentenced to that deterioration. They can't, because unless you have some type of medical intervention, the natural progression is that you're going to age and decline. Your body is going to start failing you, right? So it's not about necessarily exercising this right tomorrow. I want this right, and I want other people to have this right, so that whatever time they decide it is expedient to no longer suffer, they should have the right to no longer exist. They should not be forced to work at 70, 80 years old because they don't have a retirement. They should not have to be put on public assistance. None of this. If your quality of life has declined, then you should have the right to terminate your existence without any interference from the state. Again, for that person who keeps trolling me, my book does not argue that the Supreme Court say that we have a right to medical assistance. My articulation is based on natural law. The only reason that I brought up the Supreme Court and case law is to expose their hypocrisy and the illegitimacy of the system. Basically, all the justifications are for the benefit of the state and for the benefit of society, and none of it serves your interest. That is the point of it. I never said that the Supreme Court agrees with my position or that the Supreme Court validates my position. I was invalidating the Supreme Court. So stop the gaslighting. There is no debate. Everything that I'm saying is objectively true. This is a right that exists under natural law. It doesn't require positive law. So, even your death, whether it's through medical intervention or it's a natural death, that in and of itself is involuntary. You didn't choose to die. That was your death sentence was imposed on you along with your life sentence. So all these so-called pro-lifers who say anti-natalist, it's a death cult. No, you're the fucking death cult. Everybody who has life imposed on them is going to have to die. You are the fucking murderers, not us. A person who was never born cannot die. I don't have any children. I have not caused anyone to die. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You have caused people to die because your children will die, and you will have to die as a result of the fact that your parents imposed life on you. So stop the Uno reversal. Stop trying to flip the script. No, we have not caused anyone to die. It is not a death cult. Now, I've already said there's a distinction between the original imposition and the forced continuation. The original imposition was made by your parents, and then the state forces you to continue to exist because the alternative is not an alternative that a reasonable person would take. Your parents wanted to have children for their own purposes, for their own legacy, validation, for their own emotional satisfaction, to give themselves purpose, blah, blah, blah. That was their decision. It was not yours. You're the one who has to suffer all the consequences. And in most scenarios, the parents are going to die before the child. So they're going to be dead and gone, and you're going to be left suffering the consequences of a choice they made, right? How is that fair? How is any of this shit fair? How is any of this consensual? The state compounds the original battery because they force you to continue existing by denying you the right to medical assistance. This is a right that would exist under natural law. Under natural law, anybody would have the right to contract with a person of their own choosing without a medical license from the fucking state to do whatever the hell they want with their body, because they would actually own their body in a state of nature. But under the state of society, you don't own your life. You don't own your body. You are owned by the fucking collective, and the collective has the final say. So whether you personally agree or disagree, whether you think that you own your life or not, because they're telling me, well, you can just choose. It's a perspective. If you choose to disbelieve that you own your life, then you actually own your life. No, the fuck you don't. The state has a monopoly on violence. The state will deploy violence to force you to submit to its will, so you don't have that fucking right. Whether you choose to believe it or not, this is an objective fact. The state has force. You don't have force. Might makes right. You do whatever the fuck the state tells you to do because you are the state's fucking slave. Now, in my book, I do have some case law where I say that the primary duty of parents is to raise children to prepare them for duties that they owe to the state. You don't own your life, and the parents don't own their lives. Therefore, the parents don't own you, and they think that they do. By the way, they think that you are their child. They think that you are their property. No, you and your fucking child are both slaves to the state. So you don't own your children. You enslave your child to this fucking oppressive ass system. Even though you're a fucking slave, you can't even see your own enslavement, which is why you did it. Because if you knew you were a fucking slave, you probably wouldn't. Well, I don't know. I mean, we do have that whole history with actual chattel slaves in America, and they still were procreating. So I don't know. This shit isn't rational, by the way. It's the will to life. I've talked about Schopenhauer, how it's just an insatiable desire for more, to expand. It's not rational. It drives people to sex and an irrational behavior. And I also talked about what Rousseau said, that basically Rousseau explicitly says that you don't own your life. Your life is a conditional grant from the state, right? You serve the state. Again, I've already addressed this in my book. So for those of you who listen to that, or actually, even better, if you actually read it, then you would have already got where Rousseau. You can actually cross references and verify that everything that I said in my book is factual. I did not make anything up. The only thing I did was contextualize it. I did apply my own analysis to it. I basically said what the Supreme Court said, and then I gave my own interpretation of it to say, oh, based on the way a master slave relationship works, the state is acting as your fucking master. Of course, I did not say that the Supreme Court is claiming the state is your master. Why would I say that? Who in their right mind would think that the Supreme Court would actually admit that the state is your master? No, that's my fucking analysis. Anybody with a fucking modicum of common sense would know that is what I was saying. I never once did I say the Supreme Court said that the state is your master. And I would go even further to say anybody who took that from my book is not worth debating, because you're not intellectual enough for me to waste my time debating you for based on non sequiturs, based on things that I never actually fucking said. So I actually described it in my book as a system of life slavery. At no point in this timeline was any of this shit consensual or voluntary. It's all based on force. None of it is legitimate. Now, these same people who claim that it is voluntary, I just want to talk about their duplicity, right? Because these are the same people who don't support you having a right to medical assistance or any alternative to opting out. These are the same people who support the religious terror, right? They're the ones indoctrinating people with this whole dogma about hell, that anybody who terminates their life, they're going to spend an eternity to hell. So they've indoctrinated with this bullshit. Now you're in fear. You have all this religious trauma that if you die, you're going to spend an eternity to hell, right? They are the ones who support psychiatric commitment. If you express your crime thoughts, they are the first ones to report you and have you committed involuntarily through violence, have you pumped full of drugs. They are the very people who support the criminalization of medical assistance in the first place. They suppress information. They support it, by the way. They support it to where you can, if you wanted to find information about how to do it, you would not be able to find any information. And you can do that right now. Let me stop, because I don't want to get this live stream taken down. But the bottom line is that you're not going to be able to find any information. And then after they have done all this, after they have erected all of these barriers, they're going to gaslight you and say, oh, you chose this, right? After they have indoctrinated you through the whole narrative that you're going to go to hell, after they have threatened you with psychiatric commitment, after they have criminalized medical assistance, after they have suppressed information, now they're going to say that you should just figure out how to do it on your own. No support. You can't even, you know that it is criminal for anyone to even provide emotional support. So you're just supposed to figure it out on your own. You're not entitled to any assistance whatsoever. And the analogy that I made is basically like saying a woman should just go out into the wilderness, have a child with no medical assistance, and she should just beat her umbilical cord with a rock, figure out how to do it on her own. We're going back to the Stone Age, right? We're going back to it's like, I would even say it's more regressive than the Stone Age, because in the Stone Age, maybe somebody could at least help you beat your umbilical cord with a rock. But under this oppressive civilization, democratic bullshit system, nobody even can assist you with beating your fucking umbilical cord with a rock, because they can't do it without a fucking medical license. So they need a fucking medical license to do any medical procedure. And so you're basically left to whatever the state allows you to do. The state is a gatekeeper, and without the state permission, then you can't do shit. You can't. There's no freedom to contract. Even if you were to consent, they're going to, because they know what's in your best interest, right? They know what you want better. You're so fucking incompetent, you can't make any decisions for yourself. They're going to decide who's competent for you, right? Because you're so fucking stupid and incompetent. And so these people who are gaslighting to say that you are free to do it already, the reason that they are doing this is because they don't support your right to medical assistance. This is a gaslighting. The reason they're not going to support your right to do it the way that you want to do it, in a safe, humane manner, the same manner that is afforded to cats and dogs and capital murderers, they're going to relegate you to going out into the wilderness and doing it the most violent and traumatic way possible, because they don't support your right. This is a gaslight. They know that you're not going to jump off the fucking cliff. They wouldn't do it themselves. So they're telling you to do something that is unreasonable. It fails the reasonable person standard. They don't want you to have the right. So they're going to gaslight you to say you don't need the right because you already have it. They're conflating rights with abilities. I already addressed in my book that a right is not the same as an ability. You can have an ability and still not have the right to exercise it. They are arguing in bad faith. They're gaslighting you. And they're doing this intentionally, by the way. And it's frustrating because you think that they're saying it in good faith, so you're actually engaging with them. You should not engage with them. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't give a fuck. The only reason that they're doing this is to absolve themselves, because they do want to procreate and they don't want to feel any guilt. So what they're going to say is, I'm going to procreate, right? It's so many layers of the gaslighting. The child chose to exist because of some soul contract bullshit. They consent to continuing to exist, right? But then they're going to actively resist or go against every attempt that you have to resist your involuntary existence, right? They want to extract from you. They want you to participate in capitalism and democracy and all these institutional tools of enslavement for their benefit, for their extraction, right? This is why they enjoy life, by the way. They don't enjoy life for its own sake. They enjoy life because they are able to extract from others, right? Look at the book cover. Look at my book cover where I talk about you can just see the image. Validate my values. I don't remember everything that I said, but follow my unjust laws, live for me, basically serve my interests, make me happy. This is the reason why your parents created you in the first place. This is the reason why the state maintains your enslavement and forces you to continue to exist, because you are too fucking valuable. That is what that concurrence and Glucksberg said, right? That's what Justice Stevens was saying, that you are far too valuable to allow you to have the right to autonomous disposal. So the state forces you to continue existing for its own extractive purposes. Let me see if I have any comment, because I'm pretty much right. Well, they're saying that you already did. No proof whatsoever. I guess your soul must have already consented. Um, and it's so crazy because when I'm debating these people and they're gaslighting me, it's like on one hand, maybe I shouldn't be rude and cut them off, but it's like it's so fucking predictable. It's so reflective. It's like I've heard the same shit already, like ad nauseum. I know exactly what you're going to say, so it's like once you open the first sentence, I already know what your whole like. I know what's going to follow. So should I listen to your try or should I just cut it off at the pass, like, and correct you on your fucking ignorance, right? Because I know what the fuck you're going to say. So I should be polite and just let you finish your bullshit, or to correct you so you can actually educate yourself. It's not the great. Yeah, it's the worst thing ever. Thank you so much for your support. Right, you should have the right. It should be it's not even that I think it should be a positive right. It should be decriminalized because the state has no authority to grant it or deny it. It's something that exists in the state of nature. All of these laws criminalizing it are completely illegitimate, and it's only proof of your enslavement. If you have no right to death, you have no right to exist. You must have the former to decide what you must be able to do, and the void for the existence. Right. If not, it's just exactly. It's total enslavement. It, if you don't have the right to die, then you have no right to life. You don't own your life. The state owns your life. And for that person who wants to debate me, you can't debate that point. You have not negated that point. I'm not sure how you think that you debunked me because you're trying to focus on ancillary case law to prove that the case law didn't say what I said. I never said that the state admitted to being our masters. I never said that. What I'm saying is that the state is enslaving us and forcing us to exist against our will, that we don't own our lives. We don't have the right to do what we want with our lives because the state has superior disposal rights. Some of these people, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them fucking drink. These people are supposed to be these pseudo fucking intellectuals. And I know when I get into the legal gobbledygook, it goes over some people's head, but this is not ostensibly this is not an unintelligent person. This is a seasoned attorney. Either he did it intentionally, he's intentionally misrepresenting my position because he's trying to invalidate me. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I think I was very clear. And in fact, I've done live streams. I've gone over these chapters. I guess I'm up to chapter 9 now. But at the end of my live streams, I open it up for questions. Nobody ever asked me any questions. Nobody asked me any questions, yet you want to misrepresent my position. And if we choose this, then how so? Do we remember a time where well, this is what they say. They say that your soul consented to this bullshit. You just can't remember, right? You just can't remember, but you chose this shit. All right, so I mean, they're gaslighting us, and I think their intent is to basically say that, oh, you're claiming you're against procreation, but you secretly want it to exist. And they're going to use the fact that you're still here as proof of the fact that you consented to the original imposition. This is a projection, right? Because I could say the same thing, or I could say the opposite about them, right? Because if they procreate, then they must actually want all the consequences that flow from procreation, right? They must actively support the oppression, the enslavement. They must actually support the death of their own children, right? How can you procreate and not support all the consequences that come with it? Because they're telling us that we actually agree with our own enslavement because we continue to be here, right? How can we can't say the same shit about them? Why would you create a fucking child when you know your child is going to die? How can you actually justify that? You can't. There's no way you can actually give a fuck. You just don't give a fuck because the reason you don't give a fuck is because you assume that your death is going to precede your child's death. So you're going to die, your child is still going to be here. So you don't actually have to think about it. It's out of sight, out of mind. You know that your child is going to have to die at some point, but as long as you don't actually have to see it, then it's not your fault. It's not something that you have to think about. You only have to focus on your own death because you're going to die first, but your child is going to still be here and be stuck with the life that they may or may not want. You're going to be long gone, and they're going to be stuck maintaining an involuntary existence that you impose on them. And they did this shit in cold blood, by the way, right? It's not like they feel guilty. They don't feel any responsibility. They don't think they have a duty to give their children the best lives possible. They think, oh, I gave you the gift of life. It's on you to figure out. You need to figure out the purpose of your involuntary existence. No, not me. I'm your fucking creator. It wasn't my responsibility to figure out your purpose. Why did I do this shit in the first place? No, I push you out into the world. Now you fucking figure it out. So, what point of our existence is supposed to be involuntary? What point of this is supposed to be consensual? What part of this is supposed to be legitimate? Right? Where is the legitimacy in this whole narrative? Identify the point in this whole timeline where there was a free, uncoerced choice that was available to the person who exists. Was it conception? Was it birth? Was it the point that they took their first breath? Was it the point that they ate their first meal? Was it the point that they did not choose self destruction out of their own biological terror of their own annihilation? Was it the religious fear that you indoctrinated them with that they were going to die and go to hell? Was it the fact that you supported these civil commitments where they're going to be involuntarily put under psychiatric confinement for expressing thought crimes? Did they consent to the deterioration of their body? Did they consent to the fact that they're going to have to die at some point anyway, whether they have medical assistance or not? What part of this bullshit was voluntary? And they're not going to answer this, right? They're going to say that, oh, you're just giving up. You're just giving up. You can't give up on something that you never chose in the first place, right? And as I said in the past, you're not giving up on yourself. You're giving up on them. You're giving up on this fucking slave system because they're not going to do anything to change your quality of life. They're not going to do anything to fight against state oppression. They want you to remain enslaved. They're not going to change the system at all. They're not going to give you a better job. They're not going to give you better housing. They're not going to advocate for you to have basic, decent, a basic human rights. They're not going to do anything substantive. All that they think, okay, this is what they're going to offer. They're going to offer you a talk. Do you want to talk? Right? Do you want to talk? How about you just call me and we can talk about it, right? And by the way, when they want to talk or they want you to call some fucking hotline, let me scratch that so my live stream doesn't get taken down. If they want to talk to you, it is for their benefit, not for yours. It's because of their curiosity. They want to know, why are you so miserable that you don't enjoy life for their own sadistic pleasure so they can feel superior? They're getting some kind of gratification out of it. They want to hear your fucking story. They want to make it solipsistic. They don't want to look at the systemic problems. They want to look at your personal grievance. And so that they can determine whether your grievances are valid. Of course, even if they are valid, they're still not going to do shit. So it's going to fall on deaf ears. They want you to have these endless debates for their own narcissistic gratification, to validate their position. They want to extract from you. They don't give a fuck about you, whether you're miserable or not. They don't give a shit about whether you're homeless, whether you get cancer, whether you get shot, whether you get run over by a bus. They don't give a shit. What this is what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you to stop focusing on your own misery, on your own oppression, and start focusing on others. This is how they keep you chained. This is how they keep you so beholden to this oppressive system, because you're not ever supposed to focus on yourself, right? You're not supposed to care about yourself at all. You're supposed to be a sacrificial animal. Think about everybody else, right? And so now everybody's chained to each other because you can't escape this bullshit because you're so tethered and worried about everybody else. You can't help anybody else, right? The bottom line is that their parents should not have enslaved them. They don't want to help themselves. They're not going to liberate themselves. Even even these, a lot of people who are miserable, they're so they're still going to cling to this shit because they don't know any alternative. Some of the most miserable people still want to continue existing. I don't know why. I can't explain it. And that is their freedom to choose that. If they want to be miserable, they have every right to be miserable. But you don't have a right to enslave me or make me feel guilt trip me into remaining enslaved because you want to continue being enslaved and you want to continue being miserable. It's like if you were on some fucking plantation, right? You're trying to escape. My fucking phone is going off because I have some fucking child abduction notice. This is so fucking annoying. I don't have any fucking children. Why are you notifying me? Go notify some fucking breeder. This is their fucking problem. So you're on a fucking slave plantation. You're trying to escape. You've already made an effective plan on how to get away, right? And then you have some fucking gatekeepers saying, "Oh no, you shouldn't escape. Why would you want to escape the fucking plantation? You should just stay here and get whipped and get tortured and get raped so that you can benefit the other slaves." Does that make any fucking sense? Isn't that fucking retarded? How about you? I mean, I'm not saying that you should procreate, but how about you liberate yourself from your freedom, from your enslavement, and then if you make it to fucking Canada, maybe you can start a life there. I'm not saying you should procreate, but maybe you can start a family in your freedom, not under fucking enslavement. Under this fucking oppressive democratic system, there is no justification for enslaving anybody to this bullshit, right? So you want me to remain enslaved so I can benefit others? Fuck that. Fuck that. If they want to be enslaved and they don't want to liberate themselves, then that's their fucking problem. It's not my fucking responsibility. They are not my children. I did not create them. I owe them no obligation. They can turn to their parents for their fucking solutions, not me. And by parents, I'm referring, what I mean is that they can turn to their creators. Now let's see if there are any more comments, because I'm about to get off here. And no, I am not debating anybody. I just don't think there's any point. I'm not looking for a debate. What I'm looking for are ways to strengthen my arguments. I'm looking for strategies on how to make my book better, how to actually get the legal right that we all should have. For you to just gatekeep and you want to tell me that I'm wrong, this is not debatable. It's not debatable. Why would I? If I own my life and it's my life, why do I need to debate you on what I need to do with my life? Everyone should have the freedom to do with their own lives if it is in fact their lives. I don't need to debate you. This is not an issue of public policy. Individual rights should not be put to a public vote. If you don't want to exist anymore, you should have that right regardless of what the public thinks. Individual rights are not within the proper scope of government. The state has no right to deny you the right to medical assistance if you want it. The state is not paying for your involuntary existence through socialism, which I articulate in chapter. Which chapter was that? I believe that was chapter 3. So they're going to enslave you. They're going to force you to exist, but they're not going to do anything to maintain your involuntary existence. I wish that person who thinks that he debunked me, I wish he would have addressed that. That I think that is the crux of my book. Address the fact that there's only two choices: either support my right to medical assistance, or if you're going to deny my right to medical assistance, then you should pay for my enslavement. You should pay for everything, for all of my maintenance. You should pay full socialism for my involuntary existence. Otherwise, the entire system is illegitimate. You can't have it both ways, right? He's not going to debunk that part of it. He's going to focus on some ancillary case law. This is a fucking red herring. And you want me to fucking debate you? You're not worthy of my fucking attention. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Are you talking about going out and holding signs? What do you mean by that? Yeah, I'm in the United States. Right, right. This is I'm not sure if you're being facetious. Um no, I think you didn't get the memo, and I think this live stream is for people like you. Um I apparently your listening ears were not on because I just told you under a reasonable person standard, no reasonable person would jump off a fucking cliff, or nobody would take pleasure in jumping off a fucking cliff. So it is force. It is enslavement. None of this is about. How about this? How about let me post a fucking link since you want to come here and fucking troll. I guarantee you're not going to fucking pull up. Guarantee that shit. You want to talk shit from the sidelines. Okay, I'm about to post a fucking link. You can pull up, and I guarantee you ain't gonna do that shit though. Nobody enslaved you, bro. You have been free your whole life. I'm a breeder, by the way. I make beautiful babies. I doubt that. Well, let me take that back. Your babies are probably beautiful, but I'm sure you're not because you why would you enslave your fucking children to this oppressive ass system? There's nothing beautiful about that. That's fucking ugly and sadistic. Sadistic. You don't give a fuck about your damn children. How could you? And what are you doing to liberate your children? What are you doing to? Oh, wow. Okay. No, not Steve. Not Steve. We're not. Okay. Why is Steve coming up here?
I'm Witch Doctor.
Okay. I thought you were Steve Godfrey.
No. Anyway, I hope you have a good night, man. I gotta go to sleep, but I hope you feel better, dude. I watch your stuff.
So how am I not enslaved?
I mean, you're not a slave to anybody.
So am I here? Am I here voluntarily, or like, did I choose any of this? Did I consent to any of this?
You'd have to ask whoever you were before you became this guy.
So when I should ask my soul. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So
I mean, some people think that we chose this. That's why we're here.
So you believe in this whole soul contract nonsense?
I mean, it could be. I have a cool life, man. I hope you have a better one. I really do.
Well, I think I would have a better life if you supported my right to medical assistance, and I would be free to leave whenever I wanted. That's all I really care about. I don't really need like sympathy. I just need you to support my rights.
I would support that.
Okay, then we're good.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
All right. Well, like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I don't know a lot about this topic anyway, but I came across you on Hillary's emails or whatever the new channel name is now. And I was like, man, I feel like he's just sad. So sometimes I try to interject a little bit. If I overstepped, I do apologize.
Who's Hillary? Are you talking about finding gnosis? Who's Hillary?
Yeah. It was another podcast you were on. You were lighting it up too. You're doing it. You're a good talker. I think you have a future in that.
Oh, maybe you should be my PR person because I would love to make a living out of this.
Dude, you have a voice. Like, I know I've been in the music industry. I was in the bodybuilding world, did the whole fitness modeling stuff. You have the gift of talking. Not everybody does. Some people say I have a voice for it too, but I'm really annoying. So I don't know. But you have a really good speaking voice. You sound like you'd be a singer too. I don't know.
I do.
You have a really good voice. But anyway, I think I just hope that you have, a better time. Whatever that looks like. I always wish the best for everybody. And yeah, and I would support anything you feel. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm fine with everything you said because you do support my rights, so I
I'm
appreciate
just I'm talking like a football player or something. Like, come on, bro. It ain't no, like the same pat on the back stuff. But and that's just being transparent. But yeah, I'm gonna keep watching your show, man. I like your stuff. I like your personality. I think you have a future in this somewhere. And I'm excited to see if that turns into something. You could have a really big show. Your voice is good. I'm telling you. So anyway, I'm gonna let you go. But dude, I'll check in again soon.
that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, for sure. Have a good one.
You too. I didn't expect that to go well. I didn't even expect him to come up here, but if he did, I thought it was going to go left. So, right. So he gave me a lot to consider. Um, I wish I could make a living out of this. I don't know how to do that. Maybe we'll have a discussion about that. Maybe I can do another live stream and we can discuss that topic specifically. Um, unless anybody else wants to come up, I'm pretty much out of things to say. So I think I may be calling it a night. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. You all have a good night. I do want to have a panel discussion, maybe over the weekend or something. I don't know. I did have some suggestions for topics, but yeah, we can definitely do that, and I'll stream on both channels. So y'all have a good night, and be sure to look for my review of Chapter 9.